Hello?
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
Hey, this is Pete from Suburban Rebels. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Did you guys play a show last night?
Yeah, we did.
How did that go?
At Kingsland
Okay, where's that?
in Brooklyn.
Oh, nice. How'd it go?
Went well.
Right on.
We're playing tonight in Philly.
Oh, right on. Cool. Well, this is episode number 5, and let's just start off with where did you grow up and what got you into punk rock? How'd you get into it?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I got into punk rock. I think I found the Ramones. I mean, I think I'd heard Blondie before I'd heard the Ramones. I'd heard a couple, I think maybe the B-52s snuck on the radio in Indianapolis. And then, I started reading Cream magazine and getting into it kind of through Cream magazine.
Right. Well, what do you think it was like to be a punk in Indianapolis and like the whole Midwest in the 80s?
Well, I mean, there weren't very many punks, and at my high school there was about 5,000 people, and I was really the only really dedicated punk there. I started a band with a couple of other guys, and they started listening to punk records as well, and we were a punk band, but there was literally 3 or 4 of us in a 5,000 person high school.
Mm-hmm.
And, just even to get the records, I'd have to, ride the bus all day just to get to the one store in Indianapolis, a city of over 1 million people.
Wow.
The one store that had, 30 punk rock records.
Mm.
So it was you had to be pretty dedicated to call yourself a punk and to have records in your collection.
Right. What were some of those records, like the first records that you bought, besides the Ramones?
Yeah, I think I got the first, so I was a little late, but the first Ramones record I got was Road to Ruin.
Okay.
And I kind of went back from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I had the first B-52s record, I had the first Devo record, and then, of course, the first Sex Pistols record, album. I didn't have any of the singles before the album came out. But that was what pushed me over the edge. That's what I was most interested in.
Oh, right on. All good records.
Yeah, all good records, really good records, and all very different. All of them on major labels. And then I think I got Los Angeles by X. Well, the other punk records I had the first 999 record, I had the first Damned record, I had the first Generation X record. I spun that thing all the time.
Uh-huh.
And then, the first kind of American stuff from the West Coast was the first X record. And the first Dickies record.
Yeah, those are great.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Well, why'd you pick the name Zero Boys?
It was our drummer, Mark Cutzinger. It was his idea. He'd seen something about some television news special about some gang in Chicago called Zero Boys, and he just really liked the name, and we thought we needed a name. It wasn't really
right.
Other than, you got to call yourself something.
Uh-huh. Okay. And how'd you guys come together? How did you guys start out?
So I was in this band in high school, and but a lot of my friends were older because all the punks were, in their early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And we played a show. We had played like a house show, and a bunch of the older punks came. And that's when I met Mark, the drummer, and Terry, the guitar player. They kind of recruited me out of my high school band.
Mm.
And then our original bass player, I met him probably a week later, and we started getting together and writing songs immediately. Terry already had a group of songs.
Mhm. Cool.
So
well,
they were all like 23, 24, and I was 16.
Oh, okay. Right on. Well, what were the early shows like?
In Indianapolis, there's at that time, of course, there was very little punk rock music. There was one club called Crazy Al's, which was really a pizza place that had shows on the weekends, and so we would play there. And to play there, you had to have 3 sets of music. Wow. So we would play, 2/3 of what we did at first were covers, just because we had to have enough material.
Mm-hmm.
So, 3 time slots. So it was weird. It was a very different kind of experience than you might experience at a CBGB's or, a club in London where all you had to do is have, your 25 minutes of music and you could get up and play.
Right. Cool. That's pretty cool. Well, what was your life like when Vicious Circle was written, and what inspired you to write those songs?
So I was finishing high school and then just out of high school when that material was written. I think it was just writing about what was, kind of like what I was seeing. A lot of that kind of stuff on that record is more social politics than politics. But, you can see a lot of kind of teenage frustration in there. Yeah.
Totally.
I don't know. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Whatever, I thought was a decent lyric, I would just put it in a song.
Right. Yeah, it's a great album. What about History Of?
So History Of would have been the second record. And while we were recording that record, the band kind of broke up for the first time. And that record, it's just, as far as lyrics, I think it's just an extension of Vicious Circle. Some of the songs are about very specific events. Like Drive-In was about this event in north side of Indianapolis where a bunch of teenagers were going to this one particular drive-in every Friday night and partying. And we went there one night, and the police, they let us in, and then there were all these buses, and the police were there, and they busted everybody, busted everybody and put them on buses, and so there was this stuff that was real event stuff, and then there's songs on there like Human Body, which is kind of like an attempt at some sort of look at spiritual existence, I guess.
Right on. Do you think your sound belonged in the Midwest? Were most of the kids from your area into it, or you think other cities that you went to, you saw a better response from the crowd?
Well, it took the Zero Boys a long time to be known anywhere. News traveled pretty slow back then. I think that our sound belonged in the Midwest because it's very hooky and kind of poppy, and it's guitar rock, and you can definitely tell it's written by people who grew up with rock radio in the 70s. And I think that's deep in the Zero Boy sound. We weren't popular anywhere until many, many years later. But I think that people in California maybe got the band a little bit more than anybody else at first.
Right.
But there's just always been pockets where we've had more popularity than other places. And in our own hometown, even still today, we don't have our best shows at all.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, how were you like perceived in like LA or New York City? Was it...
I think that a lot of the New York City punks got Vicious Circle pretty early on, and so it was an influential record for some people. I think it's the same thing with the Boston scene, because we played both in New York and in Boston pretty early on. California, we played a huge show in Torrance in like '82 with the Dead Kennedys, and that was a great show. But I just think one of those things that, like, word back then traveled really slow, so the record would, it would reach some little skateboarding community, and all the kids would be skating to it for a minute. And
yeah. What was touring like when the band started out?
We did very little touring, and we'd play around the Midwest. So we'd go and play in Milwaukee with DeCroixson, or we'd go and play in Chicago with Articles of Faith, or we'd go play in Dayton with Toxic Reason. So these are all cities that are just a few-hour drive from our hometown. And so you could tour around the Midwest and play these kind of punk shows with other bands. We went to Boston in probably '81, right after Vicious Circle came out, and we were out on the East Coast for about a week and a half, playing as many shows as we could. And then later that year, or maybe early in '82, we drove up into Canada and played Calgary and Vancouver, and Los Angeles, and we played in Texas and New Orleans, and then came back, and that was it for the original band. At that time, we didn't tour again until we went to Europe in like '88 or '89.
Oh, right on. And you guys played a gig with Social Distortion and Sham 69, right? At Cubby Bear? You remember that one?
I know that's, I do not remember that show. I think that we must have actually not made that show.
Really?
Yeah. Why do you say, is there a flyer or something?
There is, yeah, an old flyer with you guys on it.
No, I don't believe we actually played that show. But I could be wrong. That was a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know that we ever played Cubby Bear. That's why I say that.
Okay. What was the craziest show you think you guys played?
The craziest show, especially back then, was the gig in Torrance. It was us and the Dead Kennedys and Minor Threat and MDC.
Wow. And
it was 2,000 people, and I'd never seen that before. That many people at a punk show. And they're crazy. With people jumping off of the 12-foot high stacks.
Yeah. That's intense.
And then we played some other crazy shows, most of them in Europe. The Italian shows are almost always pretty crazy.
Nice. What do you think the worst show you ever played was?
Probably something in Indianapolis.
Right on. Did you take a different approach going forward with Make It Stop?
Well, I think that all of the Zero Voice records are a combination of the chemistry of the band members. And so we got a new bass player and a new guitar player. And then right before we went on tour in Europe in 2012, 2013. And then because it was a lot of shows. I think we played shows in 23 days. And after that, there was just the chemistry was really good. And so we started writing. And then we just wrote a bunch of material. I didn't take a different approach, but we do have two different band members. So so it's a bit of a different record. I don't think it's consciously so, but yeah.
Right on. What inspired the song Parasite Man off that?
Oh, I don't know. It's a song about, death and going back to the earth, I guess.
I love that song. It's a good one.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I know you guys just played last night and tonight. How often do you guys play these days, though? Do you play a lot of shows nowadays, or?
We play about between 5 and, at the outside, 10 shows a year. And all we do is we just kind of wait for the shows to come around. You know, somebody asks us to play, and we can get off work, and it's, you know, and enough money to get us there and get us home, then we'll do it. I mean, we look at it at this point kind of as more of a paid vacation than anything else. It's a super fun thing to do, but we're not, you know, we're more likely to go straight to an area and play a couple shows and straight back home as opposed to play a bunch of shows on the way out somewhere, play a bunch of shows on the way back. We don't even really, I don't think we consider it touring. You know, we're just doing little gigs here and there.
Right. Well, the punk rock bowling show sold out, I heard.
Yeah. That should be.
Yeah, do you have you played that before, punk rock bowling?
No, never.
Okay.
Our booking agent, Ron Martinez, has been trying to get us there. And we almost went a few years ago, but something didn't work out right. And so this is our first time.
Great. All right. Ron's a great guy.
Yeah.
Lower class brats.
Yeah.
Well, what inspired the song "Stick to Your Guns"?
Man, that was so long ago. I don't know. You know, it's like you've got to write. When you're the singer, you have to say something. So I think on that one, I don't think that that's a particularly good song or of interest. I just think that that's like a young person who's trying to write a song and has to have something to say.
Right. What do you think your top 3 punk bands are?
That's really hard. Well, definitely the Sex Pistols. And then probably the Germs. And, you know, thinking about it, it's like, oh, yeah, both of those bands only really made one record. It's like it's almost easier for me to talk about my top 10 or punk records than bands because, you know, I think that first Dead Kennedys record is in my top 5 punk records ever, but it's hard for me to put them in my list of top bands because I don't know that they've been as consistent. Most bands aren't, you know.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, I'll give it to The Clash, I guess. I don't know if they're really a punk band, but if it's going to be just punk bands, I'd say the Pistols, The Clash, and the Germs.
Right on. Cool. Did you see a lot of violence at your shows? Because I know, you know, in the 80s there was a lot of that going on.
No. We saw a little bit on the West Coast. We never played D.C. when, you know, that scene was really crazy. And
yeah.
in general, we don't draw that kind of an element. You know, we've never really I think that a lot of the more macho punk fans, I think that we're sissy music, so they don't really go to the gigs. But we played in Europe, especially in the late 80s, it was like, oh, the Nazi punks are going to show up tonight. They're going to show up tonight. And they never did. You know, it's like they realized, we're going to go see this.
Yeah. What do you think about punk these days?
I don't know. You know, I think that there's some really good stuff. I think that it's interesting. You know, the style that is punk. It's pretty wide. You know, there's many kind of different little subgenres. I think that up to a point, it was kind of easier to talk about punk because of lineage. But now, like, as soon as punk became something that people could make a bunch of money on, it really shifted, like, the reason that people played in bands or wrote punk rock music. So it really shifted things, and things became much more homogenous, and things became, you know, it's like you have to have these subgenres, and you have to fit kind of within the subgenre.
Right.
So I do still like punk stuff. I tend to like the more garagey, revival-y kind of punk stuff. There's a band from Bloomington called the Cowboys that are, I think, an amazing band. Lumpy and the Dumpers from St. Louis, I think, is a fucking great band. I tend to go for that kind of grimier stuff that doesn't really have any trace of metal in it. As soon as I perceive any kind of metal, or any kind of pop punk, like there's, those pop punk melodies, it's just like, it's not like I don't like them. I liked them when the Descendants wrote them, but it's like you can't hear that same song over and over and over again and get excited.
Right. It's true.
So people are still making great punk music. I think the last punk record that I know of that is, is like a superstar punk record, in my opinion, is the first solo Jay Retard record.
Okay. Nice. And what inspired the song Piece of Me? I know the lyrics, you guys censored them on the EP insert, right?
Yeah, that's fun. That's like, that song was written by Terry, 100%. I didn't write that. I never would have written that song. It's just goofy as fuck. But it was censored inside the record because my oldest brother, Mike, at the time, he had a job in Hollywood, and what they did was they took old horror films from like the 60s and early 70s, and they repackaged them as drive-in movies. They would change the name, and they would put ads in papers, and then they would put censored over the top of the ads and stuff, just to pique people's interest. So I was just doing that, I thought that was fun.
Right. Nice. Well, what's next for the Zero Boys? What do you guys have planned? Anything new coming out?
Well, I don't know. It's we have one song right now in the can, which I think is potentially the beginning of the next record. It's really one of the strongest songs I think we've ever written. But I don't think that we have any definite plans to do anything. But I think that probably there will be another Zero Boys record, and there'll be more touring. It's just not, I don't think it's at the absolute forefront of anybody in the band's mind.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, do you got any last words?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you very much for calling.
Well, thanks for doing the interview, and I hope to talk to you soon, Paul. Have a great show tonight.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.